today's video is gonna be very different, but hopefully still be enjoyable for you to watch. I've talked before about how I study my favorite artists' art styles. What about their works really make them so good to me? And also I try to see for myself whether there's something about them that I can try to emulate in my own works. So this time I'm gonna be taking you to do exactly that, except that this time I am actually gonna try to replicate their exact art style into a new, completely different artwork. So basically it's a reverse draw this in your style challenge, where I take a different reference photo that my favorite artists haven't drawn before, but I try to do them in the art style that they do. So for the very first one, I'm going with someone who I greatly admire and have followed for many years. Leekillust or Leekillust on Instagram is a South Korean artist that creates these very stunning and just emotion-provoking portraits. If you have seen his artworks once, I feel like you would already recognize his art style anywhere else, and I have actually tried over the years to replicate this art style just for my personal work and for studies, and I have never succeeded. So today I'm going to be breaking down all of the very distinctive parts of his artworks and see what I did wrong in the past to hopefully get better results this time. So the very first thing I had to decide on was what pencils to use, and after going through his posts and seeing his works in different lighting, I have come to the conclusion that he uses pencils that don't have a lot of carbon in them because they look very dark and detailed on his scans, but with his process videos, which I'm assuming has the lighting going straight down onto the artworks, there's a bit of a glare where the pencil lines reflect the light, and I'm assuming that's because of the pencils he's using. So for the details on the face, I'm using my Mitsubishi hi-uni pencils, which I think have the same properties as the ones he's using. And I'm also going to be using my Mars lumograph black ones too, except I'm saving that pencil for last and just on the very dark areas like her lashes and on her eyebrows. For her hair and the rest of her, I want to use my charcoal sticks because I think those will make very nice broad and textured strokes, which I think will fit very well. The very first thing that you'll notice about his artworks is that his reference photos or his subjects' eyes are always looking into the camera, and for most of them they're looking quite intensely. So after going back and forth between a few that I have chosen, I ultimately decided with this one. This is Alice Vink, and by the way, if you guys want to see all of my reference photos, including this one that I have used in my past videos and my future videos too, I will be linking the Pinterest board in the description. So I chose this one because she is looking right into the camera, and I also like the way her hair is framing her face, so we're going with that. So the second thing that you'll notice about his artworks is the very distinctive pattern that he does for the face. And I spent so long trying to rationalize this and trying to come up with what his thought process was into making this exact pattern. And at first I thought it was where the wrinkles would naturally fall on the face, but I do think that the lines are just there to mold onto the contours of the face. Not always the same patterns that's present on all of his artworks, but for most of them they look like they're more carved, especially in the forehead area. It looks like the face was carved from wood, and it looks like there's very fine wood grain showing almost. this was the hardest part for me to do because I think of the way I just form my lines. They're very straight, and my wrist really is more used to going up and down and side to side. And the way his lines flow, they look like they're almost rippling into each other, which is so hard for me to do. And a lot of the time I really had to remind myself to slow down, because as I'm making these lines and my brain shuts off, my wrist really keeps going back to the movements that it's more used to, with my lines becoming more stiff as I'm going on. And I definitely had to watch out for that all the time, and I needed to constantly remind myself to really just think of these lines while I'm making them. So the next thing you'll notice is how fine his lines are, and it's very important to remember, because any thicker than what they are, those lines are gonna look too prominent. I think we'll make them look like wrinkles on the skin instead of just a very fine pattern that's on top of a smooth surface. So it took a while for me to figure out that a big part of why my first attempt failed was because my paper was too small and the artwork itself was very small compared to Leekillust drawings, which are much larger than I first expected. So therefore his lines will look much finer. And also, not to mention, I'm assuming he also sharpens his pencils quite often for this stage. So for this one, I tried to use the biggest paper that I have, which is my Strathmore Bristol pad. It's 9 by 12 inches and not nearly as big as his, but I'm making sure that it's really filling up the page, so it's nice and big. Also pulled up my favorite mechanical sharpener this time. I kept it very handy, so I remembered to use it often, so that was also a big help. Another big thing about his artworks is that the details focus are centered towards the eyes and the nose. So as it flares out, the lines get less and less deliberate until we can see that the patterns that form the hair and carve out the subject are really just meant to block them in. So it really becomes more abstract the farther we are from the eyes. This was a little bit of a challenge for me because I didn't really know where to end those patterns that I did for her face. Because sometimes for his artworks, the pattern goes down to their hands, and sometimes they just really are centered on the eyes and nose. So I've decided for this one, since I'm not gonna fit both of her hands onto the paper anyway, to just leave them out, because it was either that or to do it half-baked with the tips of her hand missing, and I just feel like this was the better choice. And then I just went over the hair and the hands with my charcoal blocks. I was really nervous about this part because I always know how messy my charcoal drawings get, and it actually wasn't as dark or as soft as I thought it was gonna be, so I did end up taking out my old soft pastel, the black ones, and that really gave me the results that I wanted. It gave me very dark values that my charcoal sticks wasn't able to achieve. Then I just blended it all out with my fingers, and I did the same for the shading on her shirt too. I didn't go overboard with the shading, it's just enough so that it will have the suggestion of fabric in there, but not enough for it to be very detailed. So one very big thing about his artworks that I didn't know until I was halfway through with this one was that Lee K doesn't want to draw mouths, and he calls this the denial of language, and it's found on his website if you guys want to read more into it. He strongly believes that the mouth is very powerful, and because it's the part that communicates with language, that's why the denial of its importance causes damaged emotions. And that is why in most of his drawings, the mouths are distorted, and sometimes they're just blocked out altogether. So it was actually very bad that I drew her mouth at all, but I did end up going over it with my kneaded eraser and did some of those lines out, and then I used the side of my charcoal sticks so it's really nice and broad with the nice textures to just block her mouth off. So this is the final thing scanned. It was really hard to film this because of how the pencil reflects onto my ring light, so I had to keep it at a certain angle for this entire video. I wasn't even close to Lee K's exact drawings. I think it looks very amateur, but for once I actually came up with an attempt that I'm satisfied with finally. So that is it for the video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you again soon.